Hey, welcome back to the channel. And if you caught part one of the series, you already know this. But God wired you with a mind that thinks, plans, and builds. But just because it's God-given doesn't mean that it's always God-governed. So we're going to talk about the dark side of strength, because strength, it absolutely has a dark side. How? How can the very thing that God put in you start to work against you? Well, you see, it all comes down to surrender. Anything that you are not fully surrendering to God ceases to be an asset and actually can become a massive liability. Let me say something that might mess with your theology a little bit. The enemy does not always attack your weaknesses. The enemy doesn't always attack your weaknesses. You know, sometimes it's easier for the enemy to just twist one of your strengths around a little bit. You know, the devil knows that you're not likely to walk into obvious sin. Like, if he showed up with horns and a pitchfork and a long tail and a red suit, we would all know that it was him. See, you seldom lie, at least according to you. You wouldn't steal, well, except for taxes, maybe the occasional pin from the office, little stuff. But you wouldn't rob a bank. You wouldn't murder. You wouldn't cheat on your spouse, unless it's with your eyes and your tongue. But the big stuff. So instead, sometimes the enemy just gets you to kind of lean really hard on your gifting, so that you slowly drift away from dependence on Christ. Man, I've been there. It's subtle. You know what? It can even look good from the outside. The truth is, most people would probably never even know. They even say things like, man, you're so gifted. But you know that had nothing to do with your gifting. That was all just your skill set. Because underneath the grind and the gift, you're running on your own strength and calling it faith. So yeah, let's go there today. Let's go there. See, a while back, I hit a wall. And it wasn't because of a major failure. It wasn't because of a sin issue. It was literally because of fatigue. I thought I had everything dialed in, the calendar, my ministry obligations, all of my strategies, everything. I thought it was all dialed in, but I found myself absolutely exhausted. I was doing all of the right things, but spiritually, I was dull. I was dying on the inside. From the outside, to most people, everything looked fine. At least that's what I told myself. And then here's what I realized. I'd built a solid structure. I had my processes. I was checking all of the right boxes, but I stopped paying attention to God in the processes, right? In the process of doing all of the right things, somehow I let the right one slip. It took me a while to realize that the thing that had once brought me joy and purpose, it all started feeling like pressure. The same strength that had helped me to win battles had become the things that were keeping me up at night. Literally keeping me up at night. Why? Because I stopped submitting them. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. It's the theme verse for this series. Trust in Yahweh with all of your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Listen, like we talked about last time, the word lean here in Hebrew means to place your full weight on something, to rest your life on that one thing. Now, I'm not going to re-preach this from part one. You can go listen again. But let me remind you, God is not saying don't think. He's saying don't trust your thinking more than you trust in me. There's a huge difference between using your gift and placing your identity in it. Between using your gift and letting your gift use you. One produces peace, and the other slowly crushes you under the pressure, a pressure that you were never meant to carry in the first place. So how do you know when your strength has become a struggle? Here are 3 indicators that I have found in my own life and in the lives of men that I work with. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but these are the 3 that stand out to me. Number 1, peace fades and pressure rises. If your gift is producing anxiety instead of alignment, something's off. So ask yourself, am I leading out of overflow, or am I just barely holding everything together? Am I leading with energy and excitement, or am I running on fumes? Another thing that I've noticed is stillness makes you nervous. You stop praying a lot unless it's strategic. You avoid silence because in the quiet, you're left with yourself and your own thoughts. Busyness becomes some sort of a badge of honor, and stillness becomes a kind of threat. That's probably the primary indicator for me individually. The third thing is you only celebrate outcomes. You neglect obedience. You only celebrate the outcomes. You don't celebrate the obedience. This means that your celebration is tied to the results, not the process. Do you know that there are times that God will lead you down a path thinking that you're headed to a destination because he knows that's the only way that he can get you to move in that direction, and that's the direction that he needs you to move, and your idea of the destination is completely different than his? This is why it's important to celebrate the obedience and not the outcome, because the outcome that is intended may not be the outcome you have in mind. This one's huge. You celebrate outcomes rather than obedience. Obedience isn't validated by success. Obedience is validated by surrender. You have to learn to focus on what you can control. And what may be news only to you, absolutely the only thing that you can control is you. So let me ask you a pretty direct question. What gift have you been relying on more than relying on the giver of gifts? What gift has had your focus instead of your focus being on God who gave you the gift in the first place? Let me ask it another way. What strength have you stopped submitting? Is it your intellect, your leadership, your work ethic, your financial discipline? What's the one thing in your life that if God asked you to lay it down, you'd fight him? Be honest. What's the one thing in your life that if God asked you to lay that thing down, you would fight him? If you can't be honest with anyone else yet, at least be honest with yourself. Because that thing is your stronghold. It is what's holding you back. And listen, this isn't about shame. It's about freedom. You don't have to necessarily throw that thing away. And if it's your strength, if it's your intellect, if it's your leadership ability, if it's a skill set that you know God has given you, you absolutely should not throw it away. You should carry it. But you should carry it back to the altar. You should carry it back to the foot of the cross and lay it down again. God isn't trying to strip away your strength. He's trying to redeem it. You see, you were built to think. You were built to lead. You were built to carry some weight, but only when that weight is surrendered. In Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30, Jesus said this, "Come unto me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I told you that this wrestling period that I went through recently literally cost me sleep. It literally cost me rest. This verse in and of itself should have been an indicator to me that I was doing something wrong. I was carrying something I was never intended to carry. Come unto me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Rest is the major thing I was missing. And you know what that does? It makes a bad situation perpetually worse. He says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If your yoke feels too heavy, is it because you've carried more of the weight than you should? If your yoke, if your burden is too heavy, it likely means that you've stopped relying on him to carry his part. It might mean that you've started pulling for him, trying to carry your weight and his. You're trying to do things in a way that you were never intended to. The burden that you feel, the burden that you carry, the weight that you carry, those are all things that a man should likely carry. But you weren't designed to carry them on your own. Come unto me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. If you find yourself with a yoke or a burden that's too heavy for you to carry on your own, step back, recenter. Let him carry that weight that you were never meant to carry anyway. You're not designed to bear all of the weight. And when you carry what you're not called to, when you lead with unsurrendered strength, you don't get power, you don't get stronger, you get pressure. But when you lead with a surrendered strategy, you get peace. And that's the invitation. So if you find yourself in that position, I want you to pray this with me right now and write it down. Maybe pray this several times throughout the week ahead. Lord, I thank you for the strength that you've given me. I surrender that strength to you again today. Let me lead boldly, but not independently. Let me use the gift, but never let it replace the giver. Hey, in the next episode, we're going to name some names. We're going to talk about 5 specific areas where most men struggle to surrender, and how those strongholds are stealing your freedom, your peace, and your power. Don't miss it. Until then, go be different.